What's up, friendos, and welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Chris Welsh, joined by Pat Fitzmaurice. This is Week 12 wide receiver rankings. We're going through all the big top threes, seeing who might be flexes, and there are probably some big wide receiver questions this week, so hopefully we are going to answer them. You also always have your coverage for those answers with Fantasy Pros. Check out the My Playbook app. You can sync your league. You can get personalized advice sent right to you about your own league, lineup, optimization, and more. Make sure you check it out. Plus, you want to check out the ranks, fantasypros.com/rankings each week. That's your biggest home, especially relative to this show, because our 160, 70, 80, wherever it is, rankers across the fantasy football landscape are creating this consensus ranks for each week of fantasy football. You can go and check that out, and those adjust pretty much by the day as more rankers submit their ranks. So go and bookmark it, fantasypros.com/rankings. We are talking about those wideouts this week. And, you know, in the ranks contest for week 11, this is where I shined just a tiny bit, where you were the quarterback guy for last week. So wide receivers, hopefully going to be a good conversation here, but it's really been about the top end. And we're going to talk about not just, you know, these wide receiver ones, but I really think that wide receiver 2 range, Pat, has been the make or break, the guys that end up performing in those wide receiver 2s. And those tend to be like, you know, maybe fringy wide receiver 3 guys. And some players, I think, between that 13 and 24, that people are just starting to come around on, that they are much more valuable. I'm slowly hinting at a player or two that we're going to talk about. But, you know, wide receivers has been not what anyone expected coming into this season. It was draft them. And then we've needed more core running backs ever than before, and more wide receivers performing pretty high, Pat.
Yeah, just a plague of injuries at the position, Welsh. And now we've got 6 teams on bye this week. So you have wide receiver 3s pushed into wide receiver 2 range. You've got some undesirable guys pushed into wide receiver 3 range. And once it gets beyond wide receiver 3 range, lots of luck.
And hopefully people, let's say, it wasn't the best time for the bipocalypse to happen here, or for the trade deadline to end, because hopefully you made your moves prior to this and you were checking out the buy, sell, and hold, essentially the trade show that we do on Tuesdays with myself and Andrew Erickson and Ryan Wormley, hopefully getting you guys into the right spot. So let's talk about some of these wide receivers and how you're starting them. Let's look at the big board for wideouts, starting with number 1, Amon-Ra St. Brown. That was actually my number 1 last week. Had the Jags. Beautiful. Well, chef's kiss. He's got the Colts. So we're back at number 1. Justin Jefferson at 2. We got no Bengals this week, so no Jamar Chase up there. A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, that's your top 5, followed by Tyreek Hill at 6, Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin, George Pickens, DK Metcalf, Malik Nabers, and Mike Evans. All right. I said last week, Pat, that I would offer myself as tribute to Tyreek Hill, that I had been on, by, and then I finally had enough with the wrist and him not getting targets. I offered myself up, and it worked. The fantasy gods took it, and Tyreek Hill had a pretty solid week. He's now at 6. I just want to throw it back to you. Is your comfort level confirmed after that game that we just saw? The wrist injury had me worried, but they were able to finally get him involved and in the corner and just do stuff that they used to do. Do you think he belongs back in this "don't ask me about Tyreek Hill, he's a must-start" territory?
I do. I've got him wide receiver 4, and I've been guilty of overranking him all season, and it's beaten me up, but I'm fundamentally investing in one of the best wide receivers in the game, and circumstances be damned. I know Tua isn't throwing downfield as aggressively as he had been in the past, but still love the chances of Tyreek breaking off a long one, getting you a touchdown in any given game. Welsh, I'm gonna keep going back to the well.
Well, Tyreek is back, and everybody can feel good. And if you're still vying for a playoff spot when you had Tyreek, taking him in the first round, good on you, because you probably constructed a pretty good roster, or you're pretty amazing on the waiver wire. So wide receiver 1s, they're pretty locked in. Let's have one conversation, though. Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers has got a brand new quarterback, and it's the 3rd guy on the list. Tommy DeVito is there. Does not make us feel comfortable. Drew Lock, they benched Daniel Jones, no more incentives. It looks like the players are pissed. Drew Lock, you can't do it because we also gave you like $2 million+ in incentives. So Tommy DeVito is the quarterback. He comes in as wide receiver 11 this week against Tampa Bay. It's a real big question about overall value moving forward. If he gets volume, if they do what they did with Daniel Jones, and just every pass goes to Malik Nabers, blind squirrel finds a nut reference. Like if you get 15 targets, you're probably going to catch 7 or 8 minimum. You're going to do something with it and hold some fantasy value. We don't know that that's going to be the case. We don't know what this is going to look like. We could have made I made some of those similar things with Skylar Thompson, don't worry about that. Mike McDaniel's smart enough. They'll just keep throwing to Tyreek Hill. Nope. So we don't know what that's going to ultimately look like with Nabers. You have concerns in your own personal ranks. I will have the exact same concerns with my rank that's going to be on Fantasy Pro. So let's talk through it. You've got him at wide receiver 17. That's still pretty you're starting him, but that's opening up some more questions if you've got some depth at the position that maybe he isn't a guy that you want to throw out there.
Yeah, I mean, let me just mention that Malik Nabers is one of my most heavily drafted players. So I've got him in a lot of redraft leagues, and I'm going to be starting him. I'm not benching Malik Nabers in any of my leagues, but look, there's some conflicting variables here. One is we feel great about matchups against the Buccaneers, pass defense. Like that has been a green light for wide receivers all season. We don't feel so great about Tommy DeVito making the start, even though there were some games last year he started and was serviceable in. But maybe most concerning to me, Welsh, is just the overall trajectory of Malik Nabers' rookie season so far. He hasn't been that good in his last 4 games. Even though he has drawn 10 or more targets in 3 of those 4 games, he's averaged 55.3 yards, 5.3 yards per target, which is a pretty terrible number, quite frankly, and hasn't scored a touchdown since week 3. So as glorious as things were for Malik Nabers in that first month of his rookie season, things have been not so glorious lately. Maybe this is the matchup that perks him up. Like everyone passes on the Buccaneers successfully, but we'll see. It's a backup quarterback, and I don't know. This is really hard to predict. Let's just say I'm not going to be betting any player props on Malik Nabers or sticking him in any DFS lineups, but I will be starting him everywhere.
Yeah, I think the 10-man leagues are probably where this becomes a bigger thing, where you have 1 flex, 2 wide receiver starts. You might have enough depth at the position where that does become a question. For the most part, most of us, especially reiterating again, the bye week, probably going to create scenarios where it's you can't not start him. But our comfort level, my comfort level is not wide receiver 1. So I'm actually was a little bit surprised to see him break that top 12 from this week. That might adjust as the week goes on. Only other note, good to see Mike Evans, assuming he's going to play. He was practicing, getting him back out there. He's going against the Giants, which is a phenomenal matchup. He's at 12. You got to tell you, if he is active and we get a couple positive words at the back end of the week, Mike Evans over Nabers for me. Not that that's necessarily a decision people will be making, but you never know. You never know. You mean, you guys got Terry McLaurin jumped up here. It's not impossible that a team out there got a value on Puka and took Terry McLaurin and had Nabers and maybe Mike Evans. That could be a 4 wide receiver core. Then some decisions are being made. We're going to talk about wide receiver 2s. But first, did you know that feeding your lawn regularly builds a stronger, more resilient lawn that naturally crowds out weeds? Scott's Turf Builder products provide year-round feeding with essential seasonal solutions for your lawn. Scott's has a subscription plan that makes caring for your lawn easier than ever. They put their expertise to work by analyzing the location, size, and condition of your lawn to create a custom plan for your yard. And they'll ship you the right product to apply at the perfect time. By answering only a few short questions about your lawn, Scott's experts will craft the program that's right for you and your yard. Visit scotts.com to learn more. Feed your lawn, feed it. Wide receiver 2s, this is wide receiver 13 through 24. We're starting with Zay Flowers at 13, at 14, CeeDee Lamb, Cortland Sutton, Deebo, Lad McConkey, Jauan Jennings at 18, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Devontae Smith, Jayden Reed, Marvin Harrison, Jamison Williams, and Calvin Ridley. There's some good questions in here. I know I'm a Niner fan, and people know about that. But I am happy that this Jauan Jennings side of the conversation is relevant, and me not just bringing something that I think is relevant when it's not. More so, something I said earlier in the week, and I've started to kind of pose out there, and I'm seeing a lot more publicly as well. I think there's an easy case to say Jauan Jennings is the receiver over Deebo Samuel. And I think I will rank him as such. The X receiver has gotten a primary target share, specifically just Jauan Jennings. There's questions out there in the Twitterverse about separation numbers in general. Well, the one guy that gets separation and if he doesn't, gets great in contested catches is Jauan Jennings. The Deebo Samuel indirect, it just doesn't work right now. I'm not saying I'm surprised to see Deebo ahead of Jauan Jennings. I'm happy to see them close. And I also agree that Deebo needs to be knocked down outside of the top 15. I will rank Jauan Jennings over Deebo this week. Pat, I throw it to you. Deebo or Jauan, and how close in the rankings do you think these two belong?
I have Deebo wide receiver 13 and Jennings wide receiver 16, Welsh, but I admit that might be the wrong call, and I maybe should have Jennings ranked ahead of Deebo. I think one thing I have to get used to is just basically ranking Jauan Jennings as if I were ranking a healthy Brandon Ayuk. I think he's stepped right into that role. He is their Brandon Ayuk. He's been the same sort of high efficiency receiver. And geez, I mean, he's actually drawing more targets per game than I think Brandon Ayuk did in his 1,300-yard 2023 season. And maybe I have to get used to the idea. And we had Jacob Gibbs on as a guest a few weeks ago, and Jacob talked about how Deebo has traditionally smashed in games in which Brandon Ayuk did not play. Well, Brandon Ayuk is playing. He's just playing under a different name. It's Jauan Jennings. So maybe we have to dock Deebo a little bit for that and rank him as if he were playing with a healthy Brandon Ayuk. So yeah, I do have a gap between the two. Not a big one. I do have Deebo ranked higher, but Welsh, I will freely concede that might not be the right call.
Yeah, and this like the audible meme of like Scooby-Doo with the mask being pulled off. It's Brandon Ayuk, mask is pulled off, and it's Jauan Jennings. That's the play. That's kind of been my argument. The battle, my main battle has been look at Jauan, I've done this for a month plus, look at Jauan Jennings like you would with Brandon Ayuk and consider that moving forward. And more so putting him on that trade show the prior week was, listen, Jauan Jennings should be ranked as a top 20 wide receiver. And I'm glad to see him at 18. And I think the names he's ahead of are no brainers. And I think he belongs in the conversation of Sutton and this version of CeeDee Lamb that's out there right now. Like the sky's the limit, especially because they pass the ball a ton. But it's good to see you are higher than consensus on both of these guys. And the ranking also shows you our comfort level with Deebo is dropping down, but Jauan Jennings is about in that same territory of a must start. Pointing out, now that I'm thinking about this, you have Jauan Jennings over Malik Nabers this week. If I heard your rank correctly, you have him at 16 and you have Nabers at 17. So if you had Jauan Jennings, you said, oh, I'm starting Nabers everywhere. Legit shot. You picked up Jauan Jennings off of waivers that you would start him over Nabers.
Yeah, safer bet, I think. They're playing the Packers. I think the Packers could be without Jair Alexander, who left last week's game against the Bears, their best cornerback. If they don't have him, that makes things a little bit easier for Brock Purdy to do business against that Green Bay secondary. So, I think both are pretty solid plays this week.
I wish the Niners had Brock Bowers, Brock to Brock. Oh, that'd be great. Let's talk about Ladd. There's another one of those. That's the guy I've talked about a couple times on that buy, hold, sell, trade show. I love Ladd McConkey, and things are really starting to come into play for him as far as I think this is his highest ECR rank in any single week. He's coming in at 17 versus Baltimore. The thing you can do against Baltimore is you can throw the ball, and Ladd has really, really been benefiting there. Air yards, total yards, catches. He's the main target. Do you buy, and where do you have Ladd McConkey at 17?
I very much buy him. He's inside my top 20 at wide receiver 19. One word of caution here. I know that last week in that Sunday night game against the Bengals, he landed on his shoulder on one play and was like down for a while and wound up coming back and playing. And I know after the injury, like a lot of the Twitter injury docs were saying that it looked like the mechanism maybe for an AC joint sprain, which is usually an injury that does cost guys a week at least. Now, Ladd came back into the game, so a lot of people were sort of chastising the Twitter docs for having it wrong, but like they explained that it is possible to sort of like play through that, but then you're going to be messed up for the following week. So just saying, keep tabs on Ladd. Maybe he's fine. Hopefully it's nothing. But man, you have to be excited about this matchup against the Ravens with Ladd and with the way he has looked. There was such a great deal of enthusiasm for him in the spring, Welsh, with the way he just embarrassed cornerbacks at the Senior Bowl. And, then he's drafted highly. And, man, he looks the part. Like, he does look like the primary possession receiver for this now explosive Chargers passing game, with Justin Herbert throwing it around way more than he was early in the season when he was averaging like 150 passing yards a game over the first month.
Yeah, I said this some time back, and stupid resemblance aside, like the way he separates, it's very like Julian Edelman-esque from the Patriots. You get in 10 quick feet shuffle, and the separation is easy. He does stuff after the catch. I mean, Ladd is super, super impressive. And a real big key to it as well is Justin Herbert playing so well. That's why the confidence, I have thought, has led more and more to Ladd moving away from being a question. And another reason to kind of bring him up as well is, as much as this past weekend, in the Sunday live stream, every Sunday, you come in, can ask your questions, start and sit questions we have on the Fantasy Pros a lot. We do it live. There was quite a few Ladd questions. It was like, should I do Ladd or this or that? So Ladd is still in this territory. This week, by Apocalypse matchup and just maybe people buying into the performance, has moved him into a spot where he's mid wide receiver too. There really isn't a ton of question. Interesting. I do think, coming back using Malik Nabers as our baseline here, Malik Nabers versus Ladd is very, very close. I think you have them at 17 and 19, so you buy that. There might even be a scenario where you might feel a little bit more comfortable about the volume and the offense moving against what you could do passing against Baltimore with Ladd. But, Malik Nabers is also like a super elite talent. The final one I want to talk about in this range is one of your guys with the Green Bay Packers, Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed has got the San Francisco 49ers this week. 21 is the rank. I tend to look at a guy your Packers offense and think like a guy like Romeo Doubs is the type of player that's going to eat the 49ers up with just a lot of those end outs, Niners playing off coverage. But the Niners will give up big plays, and Jayden Reed it's either Jayden Reed or Christian Watson are going to like eat off of those big plays. I wanted to gauge and see where you're at. Three-star matchup rating on Fantasy Pros for Reed against the 49ers. Do you think he can get some volume, is going to break some big plays?
I don't know if he's going to get volume, but I do think he's always a big play threat. And here's the thing, Welsh, and I think people have recency bias in their rankings, and we're seeing Jayden Reed start to slip down in ECR after being like kind of a consistent wide receiver one guy early in the season. The difference is that Jordan Love has thrown one touchdown pass over his last 3 games, whereas in his first 4 games, he had first 5 games of the season, 15 touchdown passes for Jordan Love, 3 per game. And that has dried up lately. So people are starting to go away from Jayden Reed. But man, this dude is still a dangerous, like he has scored touchdowns way more often than not in games that Jayden Reed has played with Jordan Love. So I think your touchdown odds in any given game are still pretty good. And this dude has all sorts of big play potential with his speed and shiftiness when he has the ball in his hands. So I would not hesitate to start Jayden Reed, even though things have not been glorious for him lately.
Do you have him as a wide receiver too? What's your rank on it? Because he's 21 on ECR.
High end, I've got him at, I'm at 21 also.
Okay, so you're like right there with him. Yeah. If the Niners don't have Nick Bosa, their pass rush is going to struggle, and it's going to give more time for Jordan Love. And I think Jordan Love is a good bet to put up some big stats there. If you want to make that bet, by the way, we got a special offer for you over on Betting Pros. You can unlock a month of Betting Pros Premium for free $99, baby. Download the Betting Pros app today and use code FPFREE. Get access to tools like the Same Game Parlay tool, the Prop Bet Analyzer, and the Prize Picks Prop Bet Cheat Sheet. Try to say that once and do it well. You can do all of that. You can take the fantasy knowledge you can Jauan, Jennings, Jayden Reed, Jordan Love, whatever it is, put that together, get 1 full month of access to premium side of Betting Pros so you can do all your own analysis, start making picks, download the app today. Don't miss it out. Try it for free for 1 month. Available on iOS and Android. Go to your app store and search Betting Pros and use code FPFREE. Wide receivers 25 through 36. We kick it off with Josh Downs. We've got DeAndre Hopkins, Cedric Tillman, Jacoby Myers, Tank Dell, Quentin Johnston rounds out the top 30. Jerry Jeudy, DJ Moore, Jaylen Waddle, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and Xavier Worthy. DJ Moore fell. DJ Moore got a higher target share than we had seen. At least the offense was trying to adjust to him. Yet he comes in at 32 this week, a 3-star rating against Minnesota. Probably some of this is the worry that Minnesota's scheming this year has given quarterbacks fits. You're going to go, no pun intended, you're going to give a rookie quarterback who has struggled making decisions going up against that type of scheme. I think the thing that would benefit DJ Moore is if they do what they said before and they say, Caleb, you get one Mississippi and you just make the throw, then DJ Moore just got to do stuff with the ball after. But what say you? And how about we pit DJ Moore against Jaylen Waddle, who's got a really great matchup against New England, just didn't get his target shares there. What do you think it looks like DJ Moore versus Jaylen Waddle?
I've got Waddle higher. Wide receiver 28 versus wide receiver 32. I would start Jaylen Waddle, and I know he has been weekly frustrating. Like it's been tough. But again, you said a Welsh, great matchup for him. And my concern with DJ Moore, he just had his best game since week 5, still only had 62 receiving yards. And in their first game since firing Shane Waldron as their offensive coordinator, the Bears seem to be focusing on having Caleb get the ball out lickety-split, as you just mentioned. It seemed to be working in the sense that Caleb completed more than 70% of his throws against the Packers. But like this is a training wheels passing game now. Like Caleb didn't go downfield, I don't think that whole game. I'm not sure if he had a ball with more than like 10 or 12 intended air yards on the throw. Like this was, everything was so close to the line of scrimmage, no verticality whatsoever. Moore did catch 7 of 7 targets. He averaged 8.9 yards per catch. And that's the thing, like DJ Moore is really good after the catch, like get the ball in his hands. He can make things happen, but boy, everything was just so close to the line of scrimmage, Welsh. We just haven't really seen any chemistry between Caleb and DJ Moore this season. Just not a lot of touchdowns and yardage to go around, and we're chopping it up between DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet. So I'm still not very enthusiastic, which saddens me because DJ Moore is longtime favorite player.
And the theme when we talk about the bye weeks, if we had those other 6 teams, not sure he makes it as a top 36 this week. Most likely pushed out of it, DJ Moore. We were talking about Lad McConkey. Let's get into Quentin Johnston, because you have Quentin Johnston higher than ECR, not by a lot. I think he actually might have moved a little bit. He's ECR 30 right now, going up against that Baltimore secondary that you can throw against. And you've got him as a 29. So, I mean, that's a mid wide receiver 3 here. What's your level of comfortability with Quentin Johnston this week?
We know he's not going to get double-digit targets, most likely. That's just not his thing. The target counts aren't going to be great. But considering how consistently he has made big plays this year, how efficient he has been, which is kind of a remarkable thing to say when we consider what Quentin Johnston looked like in his rookie season. I mean, now he's averaging 16.1 yards per catch, 9.6 yards per target. And of course, he gets this sweet matchup against the Baltimore Ravens pass defense. So, I mean, the Ravens have given up a league high 2,084 passing yards this season. I got to believe QJ makes a play or two in this game. So, they have, I forget how many pass plays of 20 yards or more the Ravens have given up this season, but I want to say it's like more than a dozen more than the next highest team. So I feel like QJ is going to get in on the fun this year or this week. And I've got him ranked mid-range wide receiver 3, I think in most circumstances you're playing in.
You're comfortable letting him fly. Cedric Tillman this week comes in at wide receiver 27 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a little bit of a rougher matchup. Jerry Jeudy comes in at 31. Just want to point that out. Jerry Jeudy got the bulk of targets this week. If Jerry Jeudy is seen as the number 1, could get a little bit more, it could get tighter coverage. And maybe that's something that opens up Tillman. I mean, the problem with the Browns in general is the spacing of the targets to all three of these guys. But this might be an opportunity for Tillman to shine a tiny bit more, which I think puts him higher. But, he was at the forefront of most questions last week. My big battle, Tom and I were having was he was Tillman, I was Jauan Jennings. Those guys have separated this week. Tillman's actually back a tiny bit more. I think people seeing Jerry Jeudy's ranks in there. Talk to me about Cedric Tillman, though, and maybe throw in the Jerry Jeudy side to this, because Jeudy has had a phenomenal amount. I want to say it was like 30 targets over the last 3 weeks, if that makes sense, if I'm saying that correctly. He's had a monster target share. Tillman still eats off of this, but against the Pittsburgh Steelers, do you think both can be fantasy relevant?
I think they can both be fantasy relevant. Targets have been pretty evenly divided between Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, and Elijah Moore since Jameis Winston took over at quarterback for the Browns. My issue, Welsh, it's a hellish matchup. Like, the Steelers have been really hard on passing games lately. I'm concerned about that. I think I'm going to move both Jeudy. Right now I have both Jeudy and Tillman side by side. Jeudy actually spot higher and ahead of Quentin Johnston. I'm going to move them both behind Quentin Johnston, I think. I was right on ECR with Tillman. I'm going to be 2 spots behind ECR after I make this adjustment. I do worry about how much business the Browns are going to be able to do through the air against this Steelers pass defense.
Final wide receiver, let's talk about. It's the circle of trust. He has been out of my circle of trust. He might be back in. It's Xavier Worthy. I was very anti-Xavier Worthy just because it's been a whole bunch of nothing. And then, of course, I'm like, hey, I'm dramatically, it's nothing. And then it was something. He got more involved in the offense. They, moved away. I would say, though, it was heavily at the expense of them not getting the ball to DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce. So I think that has to be kind of kept in mind as we move forward. But it was good to see him make some plays and get out there. He's ECR 36. You don't seem as bought in. You've got him at 39. I tend to agree with you that he's not in that wide receiver 3 range, and he's still, to me, a fringy flex. I kind of don't trust it. He's going up against Carolina, though, which makes you super excited, except if, this would be my logic, if he is going to thrive when Hopkins and Travis Kelce come down a little bit. The Carolina matchup is not where I think DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce are going to struggle. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to absolutely dominate and they're not going to want to take what they did last week moving forward with Xavier Worthy. These are just some open thoughts about the process of like where we're at with Worthy. If you were pro Worthy or I guess anti, talk to me about what you think from what you saw last week. Is Worthy a guy that is going to get more usage through the rest of the year?
I find it hard to see that happening, Welsh. The target competition is as fierce for Worthy as it's been all season, pretty much, because the Chiefs have added DeAndre Hopkins via trade. Juju Smith-Schuster is now healthy and playing again. I don't know if Juju's going to have a huge role, but he's going to get some targets. And the Chiefs are distributing targets to not 1, but 2 tight ends, with Travis Kelce and to a lesser extent, of course, Noah Gray. So even with the good game last week, Xavier Worthy is averaging 8.3 half-point PPR points per game. And it was the good game last week and the big game in week 1. And in between, it's been a whole lot of nothing. And the floor is super low, as it always is for Xavier Worthy. It's maddening to me, Welsh, that this dude cannot get 2 feet out of bounds. Someone's got to constantly remind him, I guess it's not college anymore where he can get 1 foot down. He's lost a couple potential big gainers that way this season. So yeah, I'm not buying. I'm not buying.
Quentin Johnston, Cedric Tillman, Xavier Worthy. There actually really might be a lot of big questions for this week. So don't forget, you can get your question answered on our weekly Start and Sit live stream on our YouTube channel, where you can come and ask any of those. We'll be with you every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if you're listening on the pod, go to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe. You know what to do. Lock in. You can get notified of that show or just put on notifications for the entire channel so you know when we've got new episodes. Those are your week 11, week 12 wide receivers. Week 11, we're past that. I did good in week 11. That's why I want it to be week 11. Hopefully we can do wide receivers well in week 12. For Pat Fitzmaurice, I'm Chris Welsh. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us right here on Fantasy Pros.